Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grab Your Keys. I am excited to have a Grab Your Keys chat with Danielle Prost. She is a branch manager at the Prost Mortgage team in Kentucky and is a super friend of mine and a peer. And I'm happy to have her on Grab Your Keys. So, Danielle, welcome to Grab Your Keys.
So excited. Thanks, Sue, for asking me to be on today.
Well, I know that you have a lot to share with the people out there on, being married to a mortgage person, running a branch, and all the fun things that has to do with it. But let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in the mortgage world?
Sure, absolutely. So my husband is Ken Prost. He's a loan officer for Success Mortgage Partners, Prost Mortgage Group. And we started dating when I was in college, and I wanted to be a diplomat. So my degree is in diplomacy. And Ken had been in the industry when we were dating. And then when I graduated college, I ended up being a social worker for several years for Cincinnati area. And when our oldest, who just turned 18, was born, like 8 weeks into him being born, I was like, oh, I need a job. Like, I don't want to work. I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, which is amazing for everybody who is one and all of that. But I really wanted to get back into the workforce, but wanted control of my hours.
Right.
So I started just working alongside of Ken in the company that we owned at the time and just helping and just being more on like a processing side. And then, so it's been 19 years that we've worked together. And 14 years ago, I became the branch manager. So that's a role that I've had for a long time.
So how is it to work with your spouse?
I think it's so fun. And I say that with most truth, right? Like, it's not always fun, but I like it because, especially when our kids were little and it seemed like life could be very chaotic, which to anybody that's young moms, it gets better. But when they're little, it's very hard and very challenging. But with both of us trying to work towards the same goals, I really liked that. So if there's ever a question of like, people like, I could never work with my husband. If you align your goals, that's what makes it so much better.
Right.
So for our family, for us as a team, our son who's older, our older son has interned with us before. Our younger son cleans the office. Like, just having more of that family approach to our business. And I think that's appealing to the borrowers as well.
Right. So what do you feel your three keys to success have been?
I think that the three keys of number one has been to reach out for coaching. I think I've had a coach for the last 7 or 8 years. So that's huge. I know, Sue, that's something that's so important for you too.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is anytime something happens that I don't like whether it's part of the processing flow or the loan application, like anything that happens within the walls of the loan, if it's something that isn't going smoothly, then that's perfectly fine, but we need to fix it for the next transaction. Like, I'm a huge process and procedures person. So it's fine if there's a mistake that's been made, but what can we do in the process so that it doesn't happen again?
Right.
And I think learning to pivot very quickly, and then surrounding yourself with successful people in the industry. If you're the most successful in your group, then your group isn't big enough.
Yeah, totally agree. So let's dive into each one of those things if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So with coaching, why do you feel coaching so important? I totally agree with you. So I'm like totally on board with that.
It's kind of like job therapy, right? Because you can't see the forest for the trees. You can't see how maybe your dysfunction of management style or your whatever, and being married to our main loan officer, like, you can't see it without somebody else's perspective.
So we've had a difficult 2 years, profits haven't been there, taking money out of your pocket, literally out of your pocket to coach. Where do you feel the benefit is? And is there a benefit to that?
I think my thought with our industry is that we tend to be very jealous of what we do. So it's like, oh, I do it this way, but we don't want to share with others. And coaching eliminates that, because your coach is also talking to other people in the industry. So you're getting definitely some other ideas of how people are not just maintaining, but flourishing in this environment. Sometimes having a coach also means that you just have a sympathetic ear to somebody who truly understands what hurdle you might be facing, but also just to help you structure and function in the best that you can. And you can't do that without other input. You just can't.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe in coaching. I coach and I believe in coaching. And I think that sharing super important. And I also think having different coaches with different leadership styles is super important too. Because then you can just mush them all together and get the best out of everyone.
Yep.
And I like that so much. So the second thing was the process. I love that you say the process and pivoting. We all know that we live in the mortgage world, and the mortgage world is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. What process do you have set so when you see a glitch or you see something, or is it like being reactive? So you're saying by being reactive, it allows us to be proactive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not being upset when something happens,
Right.
just being like, okay, there's a hole in the system and we need to fix that.
Right.
For instance, when we have a borrower that gets pre-approved, we take them through a 115-point checklist. You cannot issue a pre-approval in my office if they have not completed a checklist, and our loan partners are who complete that, because there's items that can just so easily be missed in the rush of trying to get a pre-approval out. And so every point on that checklist is something that I feel like should be caught before processing.
Right.
So to free up file flow, to make it cleaner and easier for our processors. But on Monday, I'm meeting with my whole team in groups, so loan partners, and then the processor and admin and my marketing person. And I want to talk about the pain points that they're feeling before we get super into the spring market and how we can clean things up.
Yeah, that's
so I do that all the time. We're always looking for the pain points and how we can make that, because it's not just our pain points, it's the borrowers as well.
Correct. And then surrounding yourself with success. I do love that, and you are only as good as the 5 or 10 people in your circle, for the most part. And I love, especially at Success Mortgage Partners, there's so much talent that you can pull from at all different ways. And you do get to surround yourself with a lot of success. And I think that is super important. So I do believe that they are fabulous keys to success, 1000%. Who do you admire?
So I really admire you. You're one of my favorite people in the industry.
That's so sweet.
But it's true. I really admire
Allison Johnson, the president of Success Mortgage Partners.
S&P. I think that she just gets so much done in a day. And that's something that I personally struggle with, is time management. Like I have a tendency to probably be too reactive and too stuck in whatever people need my help with. That's something I definitely need to work on. And I think she's a great delegator.
She is.
So, and I really, so it's funny, and I'm not saying this for brownie points with Ken, but I really admire Ken.
Your husband.
Yes, he is phenomenal with eating that frog from Brian Tracy. He like lives up to that book. I am definitely somebody who will be like, I don't want to deal with bad news right now. Like I don't, and he'll like handle it right away. And I think that's the key to his success. Not that we have all the bad news, but you have borrowers who don't qualify, appraisals that come in low, or big. We just had a file that had a huge repair issue. I mean, like $30,000 repair issue. And I was like, oh, Ken, you need to call them and tell them like they're going to have all this stuff done. And he called him and had a contract. Like it was all set up in like 10 minutes. He's like, done, problem handled.
No, I agree with Ken on that. It's really, if you handle it fast, then, just rip the Band-Aid off.
Absolutely. It's just not my personality. I'm like slightly more passive aggressive. But
yeah, I think the realtors and the borrowers like when we're so honest with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And talk to them about what's going on in there. What other profession would you be if you weren't in mortgage? A diplomat. You already answered.
That was a 20-year-old dream. If I wasn't in mortgages, So the funnest thing, I know that's not a word, I don't care. The funnest thing that I do on the side is I volunteer at a homeless shelter a lot, and I cook dinners for the homeless shelters, and that's what I would do. I love it. I would just be a professional volunteer.
Right. That's
It's my
so nice.
it's my favorite thing. I volunteer all the time as much as I can, and I sign my family up to do stuff. And that's my favorite, is to telling them the random stuff I've signed them up for.
Right. Well, that's because you have a servant heart, and that's why you're so good at the job that you have, because
Oh,
you do
thanks, dear.
care. Uh, with talking about signing your kids up for things, that's one of your favorite things to do.
Mhm.
I mean, you have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, right?
13.
13-year-old,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
13.
okay.
And you have been in business the entire time. How is it to be a working mom? How do you have harmony in both places?
There's not, right? Like,
Right.
something's always operating in a discord. And I think if you try to work for harmony in everything, you're going to be disappointed. And I think you have to work on what needs you the most and prioritize. So, like, it's been a really hectic week at the office, and Atticus had a confirmation retreat and he needed letters. Well, I do not have time to compile these letters for him, but like that time happened. That's a huge priority.
Right.
Like that he needed to have, the appropriate letters and stuff to read during his retreat. But then other stuff, it's like, can somebody else fill in for you?
Right.
Like Ken and I will tag team sporting events. Like maybe we don't need to both be there, but one of us isn't going to miss something.
Right.
And that's another thing. I think it's easier to work with your spouse because you both can kind of be on that same page. But I think that having harmony on both as a working mom is hard. And I think you have to give yourself grace.
Yeah. Grace is good. Grace is good. What do you think your boys would say about their mom and dad working together?
They've never known any different. So they they would say it's great. Like they love it because we're both always accessible and our schedules fit within our family. So I think though, if you are the spouse, if you work together, you have to like totally be open to not having any um like Ken's family recently said something like, oh, so you're in, because Ken's on medical leave, he had surgery, minor surgery. And they're like, oh, you're in charge while he's out. Like I think 19 years later they still think I'm a secretary. And I'm like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
that's fine. And it's just not having that pride that it matters. Like none of that
Right.
matters. All that matters is that you're creating a successful space for borrowers to get a loan, that your kids are happy and healthy.
And you're a
My
team.
Yeah, and then we're a team, and personal pride just doesn't matter.
Right. You're a team. You're great at that. So what's in the future for Danielle Prost?
So my goal for this next quarter, to be very close, is to firmly clean up pain points, because I think that we've expanded our team, downsized in other spots. It's just different, right? Our team, it looks different than it did a year ago or 2 years ago. And how can we make sure? And there's different tools, right? Like we're working with an AI CRM and starting that process. Well, we're in the middle of that process, and there's more technology today than there was 6 months ago. And how can we make that still feel high touch to our consumers, and really working on that. I'm also working to get more of our loan volume up for our
Mhm.
branch. That's something that I've thought a lot about, because I've never wanted to focus on the loan amount. I've always wanted to focus on the borrower, but I think that I can tweak my marketing a little bit to be more inclusive towards some of the higher end, because we
Yeah, for
tend to
sure.
be more of a first time home buyer, which means we do a ton of units, but our volume is a little bit lower than I would
Right.
like it to be.
What do you feel is a tool that you work with that you couldn't work without?
I think our CRM, we use it every day. We use all the journeys in our CRM. Like if you're not fully utilizing your CRM, you're causing so many pain points with your team or
Right.
yourself. I mean, we have tasks that are assigned to our whole team. One of the things that we just started maybe like 6 weeks ago that I'm seeing really good success on is that our entire team, except for our processor, But our admin person, our marketing person, every single person on our team, we stop what we're doing from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and we make calls for our database. Whether it's, we're asking for business, we're checking in on people in the pipeline, like it's all assigned and every day is different. But it's because there's 8 people all calling at the same time. It's basically like as if it's one other employee.
Right. How do you distribute who you're calling?
So on Mondays, we're calling realtors. On Tuesdays, we're calling people in the pipeline. On Wednesdays, it's previous customers. And there's one person on our team who is, and then Thursdays is the pre-approvals and looking. And then Fridays, we keep that open for a corporate call. So the other 4 days, though, that's 32 hours of calls that are being made. Not that there aren't other hours of calls being made. There are, but this is very focused, very goal-oriented. And we have somebody on our team who's in charge of delegating the calls that everybody's making.
Oh, yeah, that's super good. That's super great. Yeah. That is super great.
And we don't talk to, like, we'll ask each other questions on the chat, but we don't, like, we start right at 10, we end right at 11. And I think that's been a huge, like, just trying to free up more very focused, very proactive database handling.
Yeah, that is great. And you have a lot of clients in your past customer database because you do a ton of units.
Yeah. And we haven't been working on those like we should. And so I think when you look at your business and you're not where you need to be, you have to be very honest with yourself. And it's always working on the next item of your business because that's what will help reach your goals, whether it's unit or volume or whatever.
Yeah, that's great. Do you work on having goals every quarter or every year?
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because when the goals are very clear, when the steps are very clear, when it's all written out, the end will come. Like you will reach your goal. When it's wishy-washy and watery and it's more of like a hope-ish will happen, those goals aren't being reached.
Yeah, if you don't know where the end game is, you can't get there.
Yeah. And if you don't have a plan, you have to have a plan. And even if you fall short, that's fine. You're still much more making it, or if it takes you longer. But it's so funny because I'll look back at different points of things that were really important to Ken and I that we wanted to do, whether it was buy our new home or take the kids on a specific trip. And it's when it was very planned, very executed, then it was seamless.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love everything that you've talked to us about today. You did so much more than 3 keys to success, which were coaching, pivoting throughout the process, and surrounding yourself with successful people. And we really have appreciated all the nuggets that you've given us over the last 20 minutes that we've chatted. And everyone, if you have liked what you've heard with Danielle, we would love you to share, grab your keys with your friends. And thank you so much for being on Grab Your Keys.
Thanks for the opportunity, Sue. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Have a great day.
You too.